My name is Tamika Davis. I started my supervised release April the 29th of 2008, and I got off 3.5 years later from there. So like 2012 is when I was released. And they sent me a piece of paper through the mail. That's how I learned I was off.
I started MSR October 2nd, 2014, and I had 2 years MSR to do, but I got off in a year. So I was off in 2015, October 2nd. And here I am.
My name is Rodney Gross, and my situation is a little bit different. Under the law, I was sentenced under parole is already written into the law. So I had 3 years of mandatory parole to do, subjected to the approval of any parole board members looking at where I'm trying to parole to. And if you don't get permission to get parole to where you want to go, you can't go. So my parole started in 2017. I did 2.5 years inside the joint after my out date had passed due to this.
My name is Ken Norton. I started my mandatory supervised release in December of 2019. I am actually still serving that. I'm hoping to get off. Hopefully next month I'll be putting in to be released. I don't know what the process is with that, but I'm hoping that everything works out and I'll get off soon.
My name is Crucian Stubbs, and I started my MSR February 24th, 2016. I was on it actively for 11 months and then was violated, and that's the time I spent.
And my name is James Kilgore. I was on MSR from May 10th, 2009 to May 9th, 2010, and I was also on federal supervised release at the same time. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about our experiences. Does anyone want to say whether they think MSR helped you transition at all coming into prison? Was there anything about it that was helpful, or was it just a waste of time?
Me personally, I feel that it's a waste of time, and maybe it's part of just my mindset and my drive and what I want in life. But it kind of expounds a little beyond that with how the system is set up, as far as the resources that are available to you. There's just so much that that could be changed, that should be changed to assist individuals who have served time, regardless if they have been incarcerated a substantial amount of time, like myself, or not. These resources should be available to individuals to help them, as they re-enter into society.
Personally, I think it was a waste of time. It really didn't help me transition from prison, but I think it was a waste of time altogether.
I mean, I was just given directions to a Champaign Public Library to put in an application, and basically, if I wasn't from here, how would I know where the library was located? I was just given the directions. There was no help. Even if you even called your probation officer or your parole officer to see what was available, there was nothing available. There was no jobs. There were nothing. It's basically, I had to get out here when I was released in 2008, and basically I was just dropped out here on my own with no help, none at all. So basically, I knew at that point, I knew I had to hit the floor and I had to start running. I had to do it on my own because I had no push. I had no support system. I had no team. I just had myself.
The question was, did MSR help you transition from prison? I mean, the hard answer is no. They didn't. Like Tamika spoke of, they just gave me the money for lunch and a train ticket to get to the halfway house that they deemed would be appropriate for me, which I come to find out was in a slum area, and it wasn't the halfway house that I thought it would be after completing nearly a quarter of a century within prison and just getting out, not having any clue of what I would be expecting. To just have that happen, to be dropped off somewhere with no instruction, that definitely didn't help me at all.
So you said they gave you lunch money? How much was that?
I can't even recall because I don't even think I had enough for the lunch itself because the prices had went up. You know, just buying a water, you know, when you're buying it on the train, everyone knows that it's more expensive in these traveling areas, whether you're in the airport or in the train. And so me being out as a teenager in 1993 and then coming out in 2016, I'm thinking candy bars 30 cents or 50 cents. It's not the same, so.
Anybody else? How much money everybody else get?
I think the feds give you $7 for lunch and $7 for dinner. And I came home through the airport. So it was just like this little $14 was just one meal. And then they told me I had to pay for a cab that I had no money for. So like that was the the $14 plus the cab, you know, it was just not enough.
So at the time where I was, they was giving out $10, but I had money on the books, so they didn't give me anything, so.
That was the same with
It
things.
wasn't me. Give me a bus ticket, that's about it.
Yeah?
Yeah, same situation. I went through the same situation, you know, monies that I had saved. So now that I didn't get anything.
So just to show how tight Illinois is, I mean, I paroled to Illinois, but I paroled from a California state prison. And I mean, they gave us $200. I mean, it's still nothing, but compared to $10,
Yeah.
compared to nothing, it's something. Even if you had money on your books, you could still get that $200.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and then now the first time I went to prison, you know, of course, that was back in the 70s. They gave me $100, gave me a 3-piece suit, brand new shoes, brand new shirt, brand new jaws, and gave me a bus ticket. They said, get on up out of here.
Clean.
Yeah.
So you still got the suit?
No, that was the last time I wore it, and I haven't had a suit on since. That's been a long time, man.
Hey.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, let's talk a little bit about some of the problems that people have when they're coming out and being on this MSR. What are some of the challenges people face, some of the ways in which this thing is kind of a noose around your neck?
Yeah, my problem was, and like I said, it was a waste of time for the MSR, the transition from prison. But once you got out of prison, the parole officers, I couldn't leave the house for a week until they got there. It took them a week to get there. You know, when you're coming out of prison, you're all fired up, you're trying to get you a job or whatever, trying to, get your resources and everything. But you can't leave until they get there, so that was a week. And then the first month, they at your door once a week, checking on you. And, they just show up, even though they did not, when I put in my address for parole to, they never did go check it out. They just let me go there. But after I got there, it was a different story. It was coming every week for a month, and I had 2 different parole officers in 2 months, yeah. And, but they didn't try to help me do anything, Since I had to go down to Rosecrans, which I did not have anything that I was supposed to do from the PR board. They didn't give me anything, no classes or nothing I had to attend to, but the parole officer made me go to Rosecrans. I did that for a year. They didn't do anything for me.
What was the class in Rosecrans? What were you doing there, supposedly?
I was just going down there to talk to the doctor, the psych down there, and they was telling me they was gonna help me get housing for a whole year. They was gonna help me get housing, but they never did anything, So I went down there once a week, I think, for a whole year. And my counselor that I had first, she quit, and she had told me, I'd seen her coming out the door one day. She told me she had quit, and she said she was sorry because they wouldn't let her do anything for me because I was in minimum security and I wasn't a threat, you know. So that's what she told me now. So, you know, they pick and choose who they gonna do some work for.
Oh, so they didn't want anything to do with you because you were minimum security?
Yeah, exactly. That's what she told me.
Anybody else get sent on any programs or?
Fortunately for me, you know, my situation was a little different because I left a reentry center. So a lot of the programs, I didn't have any stipulations when I came home. Thankfully, I didn't have to go through all of that. And it's kind of not necessarily a pushback on what you said earlier, you know, just as far as hitting the ground running. Because for me, that was always my mindset to me. You know, when I get home, you know, once I'm released, I want to hit the ground running. And, you know, a year into that, before my release, you know, my whole mindset changed. It's, nah, I don't want to hit the ground running. I want to be able to crawl and move as slow as I possibly can. Because the system, and this is out without me even realizing, you know, not going through, even though I know the system, not going through what was ahead of me coming out. Because, you know, it's my first time of being incarcerated, so I didn't know what to expect coming home. So, you know, even though I realized that, you know, I'm like, when I got home, you know, that's enough in itself. You know what I'm saying? The system is designed to make you want to run, to make you want to, you know what I'm saying? Because you basically have to do that. Because they're not giving you the proper resources. Because they're not giving you the proper tools that you need. But, you know, fortunately, I didn't have to go through any type of stipulations or anything like that. So when I came home, it was just a matter of, you know, trying to gather what little resources I can and, you know, start my process. You know what I mean?
So I know you were in a reentry center for a little while.
Yeah.
I mean, do you want to talk a little bit about that and whether, you know, if some of the stuff in there helped you and how it was different from other prisons that you were in?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I think, you know, it was a blessing to be in that situation, but I also believe that, you know, that it definitely wasn't enough. You know, they were limited, you know, and minor resources, but, you know, you take advantage of the resources that you have in front of you, you know, but these things should be, you know, like for instance, the way the system is designed, you can only go to the facility within a certain amount of time. You know what I'm saying? You have to have a certain amount of time to go there, you know, where, you know, everybody's incarcerated. You should be able to gather whatever resources you can to build, you know what I'm saying, your skill set up, you know, so when you're released, you're, you know, a little ahead of the game, you know, so. And then there's a lot of limited, you know, resources that were available to you, you know, so. But, you know, again, you know, it was still a blessing, you know.
Well, I know I left the RDAP program inside of the federal prison. I done that just so I could get home early. And so when I came home, they made me take like drug classes and different things like that. Drug counseling, drug classes. So even though I've never used drugs, I took that platform to learn. And that means, you know, now I have a little bit more tolerance and understanding what a person that do drugs. Because at first my mindset was, oh, well, you shouldn't do drugs, you know. So I learned about different things of how they cope. That's their cope mannerism. And like mine would be back then fighting. Theirs would be I ran to the drug. So I learned a lot in that. So I was in the halfway house and I was in there for like 6 months. So when I say I had to hit the ground running, meaning, you know, if I fall on my back, as long as I fall on my back and I can look up, I can get up. But if I fall face first, I'm gonna be there for a minute, you know. So I didn't have any help. I had no family support, no support. So I had no choice. I had 4 kids out here on the streets, and I knew that I had to get in a space to get my kids back to make my family whole. So it was hard. It was really hard. And even the programming that I did, they said that they would help with different things, and it was just like nothing. It was zero for me, you know. So coming from that situation and looking where I am today, I can say that was a lot of sweat, tears, you know, and it was just like a lot of bruises along the way. And even if I fell, I was still able to get up, you know. And I feel like if you have any MSR, I mean, really, what is it for? You study holding chains on me. Even though I'm on the outside, I'm still not fully free. You know, you have me bound to, now I have to go see you once a month. I have to put in paperwork once a month. I have to go drop. I gotta call this number. If I don't call this number and I miss a drop, then your probation officer, instead of them asking the question, why did you miss the drop, they talking crazy. I don't need that right now. I have too much pressure. And inside of a, you know, they say pressure busts a pipe. So now you got to learn how to control the pressure that's coming out. Now I got to sit up here and deal and take what you got because I accidentally missed the drop because I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off because you gave me no resources, you gave me nothing.
So can you just talk a little bit about, I mean, if you don't mind sharing a little bit about kind of the struggle to get your kids back? I mean, what obstacles are they putting your way to make that happen?
The biggest obstacle for me was housing. When I came home, I had to find a job. And so my kids, my mom took my kids to DCFS like I was 18 months to the door. So my mom had took my kids to DCFS. She said she didn't want to deal with them anymore. So I knew it was like all kinds of things that I had to do. And even with that, DCFS didn't even help me. So I'm glad that's another reason why I took the RDAP program as well. So I knew that they were going to ask for extensive drug, like counseling and different things like that. So I knew that I had to do that. And so I had to go to different court dates. They didn't help me with a ride. You know, like nobody helped me do anything. So I had to just basically put my mindset is I have to do this not only for myself, but for my children, to get them out of the system. But then at the same time, housing always kept on being the biggest issue for me. I had no help getting housing. So I had to leave my kids where they were for a while. Even though they were with family members, it was still just the point of I had to still abide by different, whatever their terms were. You know, oh, you need to bring them back at 8. Oh, you need to bring them back at 5. You know, so housing was the biggest thing. Finding a job and sticking with a job. I was working 2 jobs. I worked at a gas station and at Bankier Apartments, trying to get it to where I could get an apartment, and it still was not enough. So housing was the biggest thing and the biggest issue of getting my children back because I had no place for me and my children to go. So then I got into an unhealthy relationship that pushed me to say, you know what, okay, I can get in this relationship, but only to get what I need out of it until I can do better. And that's what I ended up doing in the long run.
It was going to be an issue for me when I got out of prison. And so I was saving up money, you know. I was thinking I was going to have these problems, so maybe I could pay up 6 months rent and then rent me a place, you know. But when my parole officers started having me go down to Rosecrans, and they was telling me they was going to help me with housing and everything, I was trying to give them a chance. But after I talked to that one counselor, and she told me they wasn't going to be able to, I started going to some of Carol Ammon's events, and she told me, that's how I met First Followers. You know, she sent me down to First Followers. She said they probably could help you. So I went down there. They told me about Housing Authority. Now, I never would have thought Housing Authority was going to give me a place, and I'm on parole. But they did. You know, I changed my life. because I was thinking crazy out there, you know. Because even though I had a friend that let me parole to her house, you know, she was getting about tired of me, you know. And I know I had to get up out of there, but I went to several places, put in applications for housing, and they just took my money. You know, you had to pay, you know, to do the application now. They just took my money. They knew they wasn't gonna give me no apartment. And I got kind of tired of that, you know. But when I went to First Followers, you know, they gave me that information, so I got housing. I've been there since. You know.
We're glad you are too.
Right. And you know something, I tell everybody, I wish there was a First Followers back in 1971. I never would have went back, you know. That's true. So, you know, I just thank the Lord for that.
So Rodney, I know you've had a slightly different battle for housing. Do you want to talk a little bit about your situation?
Yeah, well, when my MSR date first come up, I remember you have to go in and sign papers. I'm sure everybody had to sign parole papers. The guy comes into the room, he's from the record office. He's got revocation papers and parole papers. And I kind of looked at it and says, why you got both of them here? I'm here for one reason. He goes, oh, some guys changed their mind, one side and the other. I said, really? And that's all, my whole contact with this MSR started. You know, and we battled for the 3 years parole that I wasn't supposed to do. They wouldn't cut it in half like they do everybody else's. But even give me, I had to do 2/3 of it, 2.5 years on the 3, whatever that comes out to. And they didn't do one thing to help me get out of prison. Not one thing. They didn't give me a pamphlet, nothing. They didn't lift a finger, they didn't call nobody, nothing. It was all on me to make whatever contacts I could make to find me a place to go. Because when the day came, it was just out the door I went after I'd served the MSR. When my out date came, they made me stand up in a room, the original out date, and wait with the other guys that were going home for 8 hours. They all left, I stayed. That's their process. So they had no concern about how you feel about any of these things. And they show that right from the start. We don't care. Do what you gotta do. And then when I did get out, I met the First Followers. I met you and James Corbin at the bus station. And that's when my life restarted. And it's been a great ride since then, but it was still a lot of bumps. I had to go stay in a hotel because I had no place to go. I had no job. Barely even had an ID, which I had to go get twice, 3 times if you count when I lost it on the bus. But then I had to go live in the shelter for 2 months, the Phoenix house. That was an eye-opening experience, but it was still a better day than what I was having in prison. A much better day. And I was around some guys that you just did not want to be around, but I've been around worse. But I had run into all that, and now I have my own place. And that has not been easy to get and to hang on to, because when people find out that you were in prison, it becomes a whole other issue. I've already had guys try to get me moved out. These are the same guys that end up moving out their cells in the middle of the night. I don't know why. But yeah, it's been a bumpy road since then, but I've loved every minute of it. Not the pro part, just being out. Part of my job is helping guys out there on parole, trying to get them places to live. And I see what the problems they got to go through, because as soon as you tell somebody at a rental agency who they are, what they might be in jail for, whatever, oh no, we don't do that. You know, you can fill out an application if you want to for $30. We do a background check. You might get by. They just want the money. They had no intentions of renting to anybody. They just got out of the joint like that. So I don't know. It's not easy for a lot of guys around, like Kenny and guys like that are still on parole. He's a good man if you can make it, because they will try you.
Rushion, you had any issues with housing?
I mean, yeah, when in 2016, when I was released on MSR, by being incarcerated for so long, for over 2 decades, I lost a lot of family members. So when I went in, I was a teenager. So the mother and father that I would have lived with, they passed on. And so, and a lot of family moved out of the state. Therefore, I didn't have any family or resources to house me. And so they deemed a particular halfway house suitable for me and said that's where you would be going. But I knew nobody in that area or whatever like that. Some would say that's a good idea. I didn't, because I knew that the state IDOC, they did not give me or provide or even point me to any resources. So therefore, I would be in a place where I knew nobody without resources. But they gave me the ticket. I took the train, went to the house, tried to use the phone, couldn't use the phone because I was in a house where everyone were on ankle monitor. And so they didn't want me to use the phone because of that. So I had no phone to even call anyone to let them know where I was. So that was a problem within itself. Then once there was no one in charge of the house. And when I say in charge, I mean there was no point person for me to talk to or contact and ask how was this done. It was just guys who just had been released the week before or 2 weeks before, and they just said, hey, I think you may want to take the upstairs bedroom. And so it was almost in such a way being back in the cell house. It was just outside because no one could go anywhere because they were on electronic monitoring. And so they came, they saw me. There was bed bugs. The slumlord owned basically all the houses on the block. And so they told me. The owner, the slumlord came and told me, said, you got 6 weeks to get up out of here because I need you guys to get out so I can have a new crop come in. This is how I get my money off these contracts. And so he said, so I went to complain, and he said, well, nah, don't complain. 6 weeks is enough time. I said, well, what resources? I'm out here. I don't know nobody. I haven't even been out here in society in nearly a quarter century. I don't even understand how all this worked. When I was out, I didn't have no cell phone. I would use cell phones, and I don't have a cell phone. How can I even make contacts to call to get an ID, to call to get a birth certificate, to call? And he just shook his head and said, that's on you. You know?
Right.
And so I was stuck, and so that would be one of the problems I do have with MSR.
Yeah, I mean, the slumlords get a contract for a fixed time, usually 90 days, and if you're on day 91, you're on the street. Because like you say, they want to bring in a new crop because it's all about money for them, and they're not trying to do anything in those houses. Well, I mean, what about employment? What issues do people have with employment, trying to find work? Has that been an issue for folks?
Oh, yes, that's the biggest issue. Employment, like I said, I worked at a gas station, but the guy let me get the job at the gas station. He told me don't put my social security number on there, on the application. The guy that was running the store, he was the store manager. And he was like, just don't put your social security number on there. And I'm like, are you sure? And he was like, yeah, because I had been to several jobs. So many doors had closed. I even went to the temp services, manpower. So in 1996, I had an aggravated battery that still haunts me to this day. And so they were like, oh, we don't do aggravated crimes. And I'm like, hold on. I've been gone 10 years. How's that still, coming up? I'm 30 now. I did that when I was 17, and it's still coming up, and it still hunts me, So it's just like they used the whole background thing. I could not find a job because of the aggravated battery, or because, you don't have enough time doing this, or you haven't worked in food service, so you can't work here, you can't work there. Even McDonald's gave me a very hard time when I first came home in 2008. Once I signed the application, they said that I didn't have enough job experience. So while in there, I took janitorial services. I took Word, PowerPoint, Excel. So I took the Windows class. I did like a lot of things that I could do to help myself once I came home into society, but every door shut. So I worked at the gas station for 6 months, and then the lady was like, I need her social security number. And so once I sent in my social security number, like a week or two later, she was like, oh, she got to go. She fired. And I was just like, oh my God. But luckily I had another job where my mom worked and the lady gave me a chance. And so I ended up getting that chance to work for Pankier Apartments. So I actually held that job down for 10 years. But then once I got the job, the next year I was like, oh, I can do a contract, you know. So I learned how to write up a contract. And once I learned how to write up the contract, then I had my own workers and myself. So it was like an experience, but like I said, you just got to fall on your back. You can't fall on your face. You know, just know that one door shut, one door open. You know, you just got to keep on checking the doors. Just because the door handle seems like it's not opening, you got to kind of like push and shove that door to see if it's going to open. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I ended up getting a chance to work at the university. I continued to go over there, and finally I met Marlon Mitchell's brother over there, Darren, and he was like, what are you here for? And I was telling him, he's like, just go in and do this. I was like, are you sure? I was like, I've been over here like for 6 months. And he was like, don't worry about it. He was like, I got you. And the next thing you know, Miss Alicia, she pushed my background through, but he made the initial contact for me to actually get the job. So that's how I ended up, you know, at the university. It's almost like networking. You know, and you got to know somebody to know somebody to know somebody that know that person that know that person, you know. So it just everything goes in a circle. But I feel sorry for the ones that do come home and are not allowed, you know, can't get the proper job because of whatever their case is. And the judge tell you, I can't understand it. I never forget what the judge told me. He told me, he said, when you come out, you'll be old enough to have been served your time, and you would you've been served your time, and then you can come out and be allowed by a citizen. So when you think of allowed by a citizen, you think of somebody with a job and different things like that, but that's not it. You know what I'm saying? Like, you didn't say that all doors was gonna be closed and shut and I got to shove through them. You know, you were thinking, oh, I'm just gonna walk through the door, I'm gonna sign the application, I'm gonna get a job. It doesn't matter what my background is. You tell me I pay my debt to society by going to do my time. Is it really debt to society? Is the debt inevitable until you die? That's what the debt is, until you die. Even I don't care how much time you do. You're gonna still get out there. You're gonna still be judged. I don't care who can do the job. Somebody less don't have enough knowledge of knowing the job can sign the same application and you know everything that you're doing, they're going to give them the job other than you getting a job because your background is going to always be the problem. I can be the best worker. I can come to work on time. Matter of fact, I can come 30 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour early every day, not miss a day. But the person over here that's jagging off this job, just taking this job for granted, and I'm sitting up here taking it for serious, you'll fire me. Because of my background, you're not judging me by my character. You judge me by a piece of paper, black and white.
Anybody else got any employment experiences?
Yeah, I never got a job at an employment office. Never. I go down to the unemployment office, what they would do, they would send me out. But they send me out to places where they just sent 100 other people that never been to prison before. You know, I never got a job at employment. It's always, I got jobs through networking, like Tamika says, you know, a friend or family member or something. Or my last job, Common Ground, I got from Tanya, you know, she was familiar with First Followers and Reverend Lewis. That's the last job that I got. And, you know, of course, I'm old now, so who gonna hire a 71-year-old man? You know. Never got a job. I went to the employment office several times. You know, they send you through all that old work doing the computers and all that. They know you ain't gonna get no job, you know. They know it, you know.
It's a waste of time, actually.
Yeah.
But you just gotta keep pushing.
especially if you've been to the Department of Corrections. And I had, but a matter of fact, the last time I went is when I got out in 2014, and they had this one lady down there. She's supposed to be helping people with messed up backgrounds, been formerly incarcerated people. And she sent me to Walmart. And I said, Walmart? I said, I done robbed them twice. She said,
Oh my God, that's funny.
she said, that's okay, we got it hooked up, they're gonna hire you. I said, well, okay, so I went to Walmart, put an application and everything, and they did the application, I did the application, they looked at my application, told me to the computer and everything, told me how much I was gonna make, my hours and all that, had me jumping up and down. W-A-L-M-A-R-T, what does it spell? Walmart. And I just know I had the job, you know. And when I get up, they said, well, Mr. Davidson, you're hired, but we got 2 more things you gotta do. That's a drug drop, which was cool, and background check. I said, oh man. It was a month before they got back with me. They sent me a copy of my background, about that thick. And they said, no, we can't hire you, you know. But I went through all of that for them to tell me no, you know. And I'm telling them about my background, you know. Employment up there, they'll spend you too, you know. So, you know, if you ain't networking, you probably ain't gonna get no job. If you ain't familiar with first responders, you probably ain't gonna get no help to get no job. That's the way it is.
And so, I mean, one of the things that, you know, blocked me from employment and from a whole lot of things was being on electronic monitoring for a year and being on house arrest. When I landed in Illinois, the day after they came and put that thing on my ankle, and then my parole agent phoned and said I'd only be allowed out of the house from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. And I was trying to figure out how I was gonna do much between 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. He said you should be able to handle all your affairs in terms, and also looking for a job during that time. So, I mean, that's one of the things they use to restrict your movement, your access to employment, but also your access to everything else. I mean, Kushan, you said you were in a house where everybody was on a monitor? I mean, how did that work? What was that like?
It was chaotic because, like I said before, there's no point person. So you just got guys who just been released and you putting them in one house. And so that being the case, they'll sometimes tell you like, man, you may be able to get a job here, you may be able to get a job here. But being in the house with other individuals on electronic monitoring is one issue. The subject that came up was employment. That's a whole nother issue. Before you even leave IDOC on MSR, in order for you to be employable, you should have some type of work history or a resume. And when I was in IDOC, before I was released, they used to have a thing called pre-start. Now, this thing was out, I'd say like you probably had a couple meetings. In various versions of it, it used to be a month long. And I actually was a participant, meaning I was a presenter at these pre-start sessions, and I would help guys to inform them about the resources. By the time I was released, pre-start had ended because IDOC said the funding had dwindled away. So I was in a position when I was released to not even have understanding of how I was supposed to present myself on a job interview. Before I even got to the interview, what was I supposed to put on a resume? How do I build a resume? How do I change the work that I did in here to make it a work history that would be applicable on an application when I try to enter back into society? So if you're not getting this education, this information, or actually going through the exercise of giving a mock interview, so you understand how it is for people who have been not even necessarily gone a long time, but specifically those people who have been gone for long amounts of time and they're trying to transition back into society and they've got this gap in work history. how do they even go about trying to be employed? That is a mountain within itself, and that's a problem that I do have with the IDOC and the MSR as far as how they handle those who are being released back into society. You're releasing them unprepared.
Anybody else got any employment experiences? So, if you had an hour to spend with the director of IDOC to talk to them about MSR, what would you say to them?
Well, me personally, again, going back to the point that I just made, is I noticed that there's IDOC, Illinois Department of Corrections, but there's no IDOR, the Illinois Department of Reentry. You're releasing people, but they're unprepared for reentry. If you can take a time away from just the punishment aspect of having people incarcerated and try to prepare them to be returning citizens that can actually have equal access to having a successful transition, they'd be better off. Not just them, but these communities and this state as a whole. That being the case, I feel like you should take more time while a person is inside to educate them, to inform them, to train them, to give them the resources needed around these issues so there won't be a need for MSR. The reason why you got MSR is because it's mandatory supervised release. You feel that when this person is released, they need to be supervised and not just sometimes, but make it mandatory. Because you feel, knowing that they're coming out, they need some type of supervision. But what if you took some of that overriding a person and actually educated them, informed them to be able to release on their own, and they'd be actually prepared for society? There'd be no need for MSR. And you take down the numbers of recidivism because you actually have someone prepared to come out to society to be a productive citizen. And so that's what I would tell the director if I was sitting right in front of him or her.
Anybody else got anything to say to the director?
Yeah, I would tell him that he needs to start some type of work programs. They do have work programs in prison, but they don't pay them enough to be successful, to have enough when they get out of prison to be successful in gaining housing when they get out with the money, you know. They should do something to where they can save enough money to be able to get their own housing, you know, or either come up with some better program to help people get housing, you know, like some type of certificate or something, you know. $2,500 wouldn't be nothing for them to give everybody just leaving up out of the Department of Correction. You know, that probably would help them a lot, you know. They blow that much money. They say that they spend like, what is it, $22,000 a year feeding us and clothing us. That's not right. That don't even calculate right, you know. But they could give that to someone that's leaving, coming out in the free world, to help them transition into back into the world.
Yeah, I mean, if they gave everybody $22,000 in gate money when they left, nobody'd be coming back. You know, they'd pull their life together with that foundation.
Well, I would say to the director, there's several things that I would say. I think the most critical part of being released once you've been incarcerated, whether you do a year, 3 years, 5, 50 years, is still time. And inside of time, you lose time actually, time you can't get back. So mentally, that's a mental breakdown right there. So for me, I would say my lineup is make sure that upon release, which they just passed it, that everybody has every piece of identification that's needed. Birth certificate,
I didn't understand that.
Social Security card, birth certificate, Social Security card, state of Illinois ID, just in their persons. That's mean on them. The second thing I would say is counseling. Now this is my thing. Some people go to jail for drugs, for selling drugs or on drugs. Some people go to jail for aggravated battery. Some people go to jail for domestic violence. With all of that being said, they were taken from a situation, put inside of this place with everybody else dealing with the same issues. So I feel as though upon release, counseling needs to be set. It should be people out here that's going to counsel them to help them through whatever the situations of life. Because even in a domestic battery situation, 9 times out of 10, the person returns back to the person. Or if they use drugs, they go back to drugs. The only reason why they stopped using drugs is because they had to go to prison. So I think if they deal with the head part of the situation, then the body will follow. So counseling is something that's really needed. Thirdly is employment. So they used to have, like down here in Champaign, I seen like it was a place called the Work Release Center. And so if they can take the employers, call different employers to say that I have a person that's coming home from being incarcerated and they need this job. And so automatically when you come home, you come straight into a job. Even the people that's going into like a halfway house, or if you got a house, the next thing you know, the next day you're going straight into a job. Or at least you're going into a job interview to get a chance to get acclimated back into society. You know, so I think that the programming that they say that they didn't have funding for, that they stopped, I think that's a bunch of bull. Come on now. We know y'all got money, so if we know that y'all got money, use it. Use it to help your community be better. So when people do come home, they feel empowered by, I'm going to get a job. I'm going straight into this job. I don't have to wait. I don't have to worry about a door closing because it's already set up right there. You know, if I'm having racing thoughts, maybe I've been locked up and there's so much going on with me, I don't know who else to talk to. At least I do have a counselor that's going to help me through that process. You know what I'm saying? I may be from Mississippi and I don't have an ID. I don't have a birth certificate or a social security card. How am I going to get this? Instead of finding the needle in the haystack, going through the internet trying to find it, and maybe I'm not even familiar with using the internet. You know, so now here it is. I'm typing up all kinds of stuff trying to find this. Okay, but when I come home, I already have this. I already have everything that's going to set me to be a citizen. So you don't have to worry about me going back to prison because I'm already set up. These things are set up. And then once I get a job, then I can get housing on my own. And then find places, already have places put in place where it's too many abandoned buildings, it's too many abandoned hotels where they can take these hotels, they can take these buildings, and people that's coming home, they can go there until they can get on their feet. And maybe they only stay there for like a year, you know, give it a top's time, you know, give it a cutoff. A year is good enough to get on your feet, get employment, do everything that you need to do to go out here and get your own space. Because what we didn't talk about was when it's time to get housing, they're asking for credit. So that's another thing that we got to talk about. We got to be real. Credit is just like having your next heartbeat. You know what I'm saying? If you don't have good credit, you can't even get an apartment. They telling you a 640. I'm just coming from prison. So if I haven't used any credit, that means my credit is bad. So it needs to be something set in place for that as well. You know, how is it that if I'm in the inside, how is it that I can get like a little small credit card, a little $100 credit card, you know, set up to where I might just use that to go to commissary. But then when I get paid, I pay it off. You know, something that's gonna keep on, you know what I'm saying, a in and out door. You know, something that's gonna build my credit while I'm on the inside of here. So it's a lot of things, it's a lot of meat to it, but it's a lot of things that I know that they have money for.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to stop acting like they're so broke. You know, the system is broken enough. It's shattered into a million pieces. But here it is, you got different organizations trying to put the pieces together, but then the state of Illinois is saying, oh, we don't have money for that. Oh, you have the money. You have the money. So that's what I was saying.
The magic word that you said, Tamika, was it's already set up. You know, it's literally set up for you to fail unless you're driven to succeed. And I think the fortunate thing is, you know, those that are sitting here on this panel is the amount of time that one has put in. It drives you to succeed because you spend so much time and you've learned so much, not just through education, but through self and through others, you know, and seeing, you know, people, you know, your people, you know, people around you suffer, you know, from the turmoil that you are actually dealing with on the inside. So when you talk about set up, we set up to fail. We set up to where we come out here the way the system is designed, you know, the rush, the community, you know, the resources, the lack of resources, should I say, that is available to you. You set up to fail, you know, so for me, you know, it's like, you know, these are the things that, you know, that drives us, that we have to stay focused on, you know. I mean, there's a whole lot in what everyone has really just spoken on, and ain't no wrong answer, you know, ain't no wrong statement in it, because we all, you know, have endured, you know, in our own way, you know. But that's for me, that's just how I see it. That, you know, the system is designed for us to fail, unless you're driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially when, you know, on their website, they said it takes $100,000 to violate someone, to put them back in the system. And the last time I was in the Department of Correction, every week they would bring 200 people from Cook County. So you can imagine all them hundreds of thousands of dollars that they're dealing with there, and they could take that money and help people,
Exactly.
you know.
And not to break the energy about the chocolate, that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You know, y'all have to forgive me because you know, my train of thought is kind of limited because it's just so much.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's on your heart, but you're absolutely right. You know, it's so much that they can do. You know, you're right, Tamika. They do have the funds. You know, there's so much that they can do, but you know.
I mean, they've built 34 prisons since 1980, right? Each one of those prisons has cost them tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars, and yet they only got $10 to give you when you leave. Come on now.
Yeah.
Charles.
First went to prison. Now I think they got, what, 41?
Something like that. It's up there. Yeah. They closed a couple down, but you know, and they cut the population down, but they still don't have any money to spend on, you know, people coming out.
Yeah, that's what you call. They had a plan back in them days, mass incarceration.
That's right. Rodney, you got anything to say to the direction?
It just always kind of amazed me that when somebody goes to prison, they wait till he's like 6 months short to try to help him get out, if they do try to help him. And that's supposed to start the day he goes in. Why do they wait till he's done? Then you try to mold him up to where he's ready to go outside. It's not sticking. You know, if you ain't got no help out here, you're just in trouble. And I've seen so many guys try and die, which I mean by fail, and come back. I've saw a couple of guys 10 different times. They go out, they do the same thing, commit the same type of crimes, go back to jail, cop out, get a little 2 years, 3 years, they're right back in prison. Their dirty dishes aren't even clean yet. That's how fast it happens. They come right back. And that's what they want. And that needs to stop. Somebody needs to quit looking at the bottom line and start looking at the people that's creating everything. I mean, without us, you ain't got none of that, so you might want to start looking at us a little bit. It's not enough of that.
So one last question. What could be laid out there that would make a difference for people on a scale, bigger than we're able to do if the IDOC or if the state was putting out the kind of resources that could be put out there? What kind of things would you see happening that should be part of reentry when people come home? I mean, people have laid out some stuff. People should be getting some money. What else should be out there?
Oh, it should be a lot easier to get on these programs. I mean, they got all these programs and they tout them all the time about you can get this, you can get this, you can get that. But if you ain't got a card, you already got a problem. Because you gotta go from here to there with your IDs to this place, and get these people to sign stuff.
Yeah.
You gotta go through too many things just to even get on the program. Then you gotta wait for somebody else to approve you. You know, and if you forgot to put your signature on it, you get thrown away, you gotta do it all again. I went through that, so I know.
Yeah. I think everybody needs to be re-educated, in some way. I need to be re-educated, man. Whether they want to or not, I think that's education is the biggest part of it. Because I think I see a lot of things. I mean, watching TV or or programs I see on TV. I mean, I say, hey, you know what? I could have did that. If somebody had to show me how to do it, I could have did that. Just show them how easy it is to be re-educated. And I think first of all, we started off doing that type of thing, right? But it's hard to get people to get to that point. So I think the biggest thing is education. Man, I wish I had got it, But when you come out of prison, you get stuck, because you don't have what you need, So, you ain't thinking about education, you're thinking about survival. So you get right back into your old ways, That's what happened to me, Man, I needed to be re-educated because that's what I was used to, what I was always doing. If I was educated, school I'm talking about, instead of streetwise. Streetwise is what gets you caught up. School, I think I would have been a better person. I think we all would have. Because you see so many things that I could have did, But I didn't. I chose the other way.
I mean, really, as a reentry program, it's a shame, but it's like you taking up the mantle of what they really supposed to be doing, and since we know to an extent that they not going to change their ways unless they forced to, you have to build organizations like this to help people, support them, and give them the aid and assistance on their reentry. So in doing that, a lot of times they need computer training. They need resume building. They need credit building. They need counseling. This is a traumatic change from being inside, like Tamika said, you have personal issues, but they're housing you with people with issues. And now you come out and think you're not gonna have an issue? You need counseling. Those are just a few. But also mock interviews, having actually exercises that take people through real life situations so they know how to deal when they get to them and not or get so frustrated that they leave it and turn to what they know is easy. And so that's what I was saying.
You know, it's really hard nowadays to get anybody to come and sit down and talk with you about anything nowadays. You know, I was talking to my cousin this morning. She called me and wished me a happy birthday. She runs a substance abuse program. She's over in Decatur. And nobody comes to class no more. So she said they started telling people, you come to class, we're going to have a lottery, you know, you win $10 gift certificate. Nobody showed up. I said, $10, you got to ask more than that. You got to tell them more than that, man. It's just not happening, you know. So like Crush was saying, you know, it's hard to get somebody to even sit down and talk to somebody, you know. You got to really offer them something, show them. I think we show people that it can happen. You could change your life, you know. But we go back to education again, you know.
So, I mean, one of the points that we try to make, and maybe wind down here, but is that, I mean, people who have been directly impacted, people who have been incarcerated, have a special role to play in terms of doing that process. I mean, what's your kind of experience of that in terms of trying to connect with people, or also your own experience of dealing with people in these social service agencies and so forth that don't really have a clue about, you know, what it means to come home from prison or to even be incarcerated? How do you, what do you think there's a role for people who have that experience to play?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, because when it's a sensitive matter, just coming home from that whole system, and you trying to talk or discuss your personal situation with someone who may be so far removed and not understand what you're talking about. I've had it happen to me personally. They'll say, okay, well then this is how you get the application. You go online, you do this, you upload your resume, and I'm like, oh, I was locked up when the internet became public. I don't know nothing about a computer. You know, and so, but they're looking at me as if I'm an alien, like, what, who? Or they look at me like, well, cut it out, you're lying. And now I should feel like I have to sit down and give my whole resume and my background, like, no, I was incarcerated, just to tell them I don't have the computer skills to actually upload the resume to even get the job to apply for it. And so if there were people that were employed that were directly impacted and they would send them to talk to me, then they would say, hey, listen, I understand. This is how you do it. I've been in that situation, or this is how we normally go about it, and do that. I remember one time I actually went to the DMV, and I went to go get my state ID, and IDOC, this is when I left IDOC, they just started this, like weeks before. They had a temporary ID. And so I had the temporary ID, and I had my social security card, and I had my birth certificate. So I went to the DMV to get my state ID. I went and they said, you got your birth certificate? I said, yeah. You got your social security? Yeah. And then they said, man, you need some type of picture ID, something. So I gave the state ID. Whoa, what the heck is that? And I'm like, man, they just gave it to me. No, that's not legit or whatever like that. And so they had like a big thing, started calling people in from out the office, like, what, I've never seen one of this. And so now everyone's looking like, man, is this dude trying to rob the DMV? It was a big hoopla over nothing. But what happened was one of the people in the office came out and basically calmed me down and pulled me to the side and said, I've had people come in with these before. It's no problem. They just didn't know. They weren't aware. That training wouldn't even have to necessarily be a thing if you actually employed directly impacted people. to already have that understanding and that experience, so they know how to deal with people in that manner, you know. And so, just hitting on that point, yeah, that is a great point.
I'm glad you said that too, Cool, because that was powerful, and it's amazing that you said that, because I went through that same situation, and someone that was close to me mentioned to me that I need to kind of like get out of that mindset of, you know, going back to, you know, my incarceration to explain certain things. But I just been removed from incarceration. I don't have a choice but to lay, you know, my situation on the table to navigate through what I need to in order to get to where I'm trying to go.
It's your truth.
It's your truth, right? And for me, it's really, it wasn't a problem, but when you get put in that space, then it makes you like, you know, okay, well now, you know, not only do I not want to share, I don't even want to share with you. You know, so you know what I'm saying? It goes back to what you were saying as well too, Tamika. It's that counseling, it's that mental component where, you know, emotionally, you know what I'm saying, you feel, you know, so far removed from that individual because you sharing your truth. But then when you share your truth, they're looking at you like, you know, like you crazy. You know what I mean? So it's amazing what you said that.
Yeah, I went through the ID thing too. You know, they made me pay $10 for my prison ID, but when I went out there to get state ID, they act like they had never seen it before. They was looking at me like a forger or something, you know. So this one lady that knew me personally, she came up and looked at it. She said, we had them come in here, yeah. So she's the one who took care of me. But other than that, you know, there's the other people, and like you said, you're supposed to let your employees know what's happening with all the identification, you know. It avoided all that. So probably everybody that take that state ID, that DOC ID, gonna have a problem. You know, because they study bringing in new people, so there's gonna be a problem there.
And we know it's crazy that the prison ID doesn't count because it's got your picture, it's got your date of birth on there,
Yes.
and it's a state ID. It's issued by the state. It's not like it's something you wouldn't, you know, made on your computer. It should be as official as any other ID, but as you say,
and then that's what the state actually tells you.
Right.
That's why they implement it. That's why they issue it to you. So you can jumpstart to get yourself, you know, the credentials in which you need.
Right.
But that's telling, because they're saying that ID, they don't see it as valid. They don't see it as real. They don't see it as legit, which means they don't see you as legit. They don't see you as valid.
that's right.
Which is why they have to call in people from the office and say, whoa, what is this dude doing? Who is this guy? What is he up to? What is he trying to do? And it shouldn't be like that.
Which falls back into what we were talking about, at least, you know, what I was sharing with, you know, how this is systematic, how these things are set in place, you know what I'm saying? Rather it's a sense of suppression of individuals, like you said, you know, that have these positions, that, you know, have the lack of training, or individuals that should be put in those positions so they don't go through that, you know, it's all systematic, and it, you know, it just, you know, it sets you up, you know what I'm saying, for, you know, basically, you know, to fail in a lot of instances.
And I think, I mean, another thing is that these lawmakers will pass something in Springfield, but these lawmakers, they're not down in prisons. They're not monitoring the guards to see if the guards are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing in terms of giving you these IDs or giving you access to a birth certificate or whatever it is you need. So even though they may change some of the laws and regulations, what gets implemented inside the prisons is not what's passed in the legislature, and nobody comes around to check.
Yeah, there's no oversight and there's no checks and balances. And so because of that, you got thousands of people coming home on a regular dealing with these issues which is why we gotta make a video like this to inform you of these issues,
That's right.
which is ridiculous. But nonetheless, we here to get the message out.
That's right. So let's hope we got the message out. Does anybody got any other closing remarks, or can we call it a day there? Okay, thanks to everybody for sharing your experiences of MSR and the system, and let's hope, as Krushan has said, that some people are listening and that this will have some impact in terms of making some of the changes on these 1,189 obstacles that people with felony convictions face when they come out of prison. So maybe we can get that down to 300 or 400 anyway, instead of 1,100. If somebody that has some decision-making power and some will to push for change can listen to this and take action. Thank you.